police, what kind of fines they'll give you.
Yeah, I wonder. Hey, but when we record, well, just make a note to not talk about that particular briefing.
We're live streaming now, I believe.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Welcome again to the submissions committee. So we are opening it again for 5:39 p.m. and we are kicking back off with our annual plan submission. So Aidan, do you mind putting the annual plan back on again? Great. So where we got to, oh yeah, we've passed that one. And I feel like we really hashed out that question around the proposed changes for, yeah. So let's move to the next question. Aidan, do you mind scrolling down? Aidan, do you mind scrolling down on your screen just so we can read the next question? Awesome. All right, so the question is, do you have any comments about our capital program? For example, our roads and footpaths, our water, wastewater, surface water, and waterways, our facilities and our parks. And we've got the board is pleased to see improvements being made to the city's road infrastructure. However, the board is aware of a number of local urban streets in our wards which are no longer fit for purpose due to changing travel patterns, as well as legacy issues such as poorly designed intersections, deep dish curb and channel, and large trees planted too close to footpaths and underground infrastructure. A long-term plan strategy will be needed to address all of these issues, and the board is aware that projects such as the slow speed neighbourhoods will provide some assistance. Our residents are concerned with the changes to Three Waters, and clarity around the potential implications on council rates would be helpful. The board acknowledges that the council is also facing similar uncertainty about this issue. Sharish, you've got your hand up.
Yes, so just a bit of nitpicking for words in the second paragraph. I would say lack of clarity around the potential implications.
Okay.
But otherwise, happy with the sentiment.
Good points.
Thanks, Sharish. Any other comments for this particular question? No. Okay. Well, one of the. Oh yeah. Sorry, Mike.
No, sorry, I haven't. I mean, I do have some issues with the way we're spending money on cycleways, but that's another issue. Carry on.
You don't want to bring it up in here?
Well, I mean, we're talking about living within our means. I mean, the poor ratepayers paying for things that I would suggest the majority of people don't want. But those on council have this belief that everyone's going to be riding a bike down Harewood Road. I heard the figure of 2,000 cyclists a day. I mean, I'll jump over my grave when that happens.
Okay. Well, so something that we might want to add to this particular section is actually specifically raising and like maybe even listing some of the key areas that have concerns. So David and I and James, we've been getting a lot of concerns around streets in the Maryvale area, which I guess this alludes to, talking about travel patterns and no longer being fit for purpose. I do wonder though if we want to, but if we actually state in our submission what are the areas that are high priorities for us, then it means we've got it in writing, we've said it to council, so then when it comes time to make changes, they know where to go straight away. So for us, that's like, that's Tombridge Street would be one of them, Rugby Street is another, and actually a lot of the other Maryvale areas are just, the Maryvale area are experiencing issues. So I guess this is, we don't want to list every single street, but are there any, I guess, sort of like areas of hot interest, or any concerns you've been getting from residents that are saying, look, this is, these areas in our wards are really needing some attention around expenditure for roading and that sort of thing? Shreesh, yes, you've got your hand up.
Yes, and I have to also say I have a slight conflict of interest because I'm also the user. So coming from Graham's Road, trying to turn right on Memorial is a nightmare, particularly during the morning peak time, because there are a lot of people coming to Burnside High School and going towards the city, which use that road. And sometimes I have waited for 5 turns of greens going around before I can safely make a right turn.
Yeah.
So that's one I can immediately think of.
Yeah. I mean, it's not so, I get it's a traffic light issue, isn't it?
It's a safety issue because the traffic southbound on Graham's Road has increased so much that no matter how long the green is on, the traffic never seems to stop.
Yeah.
And people don't even slow down when it changes from green to amber to red, which means people wanting to turn right into Memorial are either risking their lives or have to be very, very patient or to take a detour.
Yeah. Okay, so what intersection's that, Shreesh?
Graham's Memorial, and specifically right turn from Graham's into Memorial going towards city.
Yeah. Great. Mike, you've got your hand
Yeah,
up.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, some time ago, the community board used to supply a list of streets that they preferred to have work done on it. That obviously doesn't happen. I'd be interested to know how they pick the streets. I mean, I've just had my street chip sealed, and the residents opposed it. We only had 2 pieces of repairs in the whole street in 25 years. So, and another street they're doing, I looked in Avonhead and I thought, why are they doing it? So my argument was, why are we doing these streets when they don't need to do it? And I agree with you, Maryvale, as you know, Tunbridge Street and around there, some of those areas haven't been done in my time on the board over the many, many years. So it's obviously a good one that needs readdressing. I'm going to lower my hand now.
Well done. Linda.
I remember mentioning to one of our previous traffic managers about Greers and Waimairi Road and how the arrows are a bit confusing for a lot of the people, because one of the arrows, so there's a left-hand turn if you go down straight to Greers, from Greers down Greers Road, that intersection towards Burnside High area, there's one yellow, left-hand turn, and then there's a straight and right-hand turn. So then people who are wanting to turn right are blocking all the people wanting to go straight. And I remember him saying that the painting and the design of that intersection is really, really outdated and needs to get looked at. But I think he never really got back to us about it. Is it possible to mention that here?
I think, I think.
Because it's similar to the Graham's and Memorial intersection.
Yeah.
Where the design, or it's not even a design, it's just a simple painting, like painting of the arrows that are, you know, he did say it's really out of date and it needs to get fixed, but no one's really had a look at it yet.
I wonder if that's something that we need to just bring up with our local traffic engineer.
Yeah, if
We could just log a
Yeah, we
job
probably
to
can.
get that done.
Just on that intersection, what it really needs to do is for that whole intersection to be hot mixed or resealed to take away the other existing marks that are there. Because they did do some work on it about a month ago, and I thought it was a lot better, but obviously it's not.
I think, Mike, you're talking about Wairaki Grahams, whereas Linda was talking
I think
about
it's a
Wairaki Greers.
Yeah, I thought there was work done there as well, but obviously wrong place. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of, this is changing the subject from roads, but we've been in touch with, well, James has, with some residents from Breachley. Am I saying that right? Breachley Ave?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Breachley Ave.
Yep.
And they are, and because of the flooding the rain that's happened recently, it's just been massive flooding issues. And as a result, it's just found out that the drainage is really poor. So we're trying to be a bit clever. Well, I guess, you know, we're trying to highlight that for us, it's around the focus of, you know, getting, as we've been saying, getting the basics right. So, and just highlighting that there are some, you know, basic infrastructure issues that just need, that just need addressing. Okay, so I guess, you know, is there any other examples? So doesn't have to be roading, but any other areas of interest that you'd like us to jot down while we've got the attention of council and the annual plan?
No.
Okay. All right.
I'm just wondering, Aidan, with the Graham's Memorial, we could just put in brackets there that it is about the right turning arrow.
Yeah.
Just on that, Bridget. Sam, Sharice and I also dealt with a guy last year, I think it was on Waimairi Road and Maidstone Road. He was after a right turning arrow. If you go down Maidstone Road to turn right to go towards the Bush Inn or the university. He was inquiring about that. We got told no, but I mean, I've seen the difficulty. It's exactly the same as the intersection of Greers Road, etc., and Wairaki Road. So if we're looking to try and get indicators in, there's a good opportunity.
Yep, chuck it in, no harm in putting it there. Waimairi
What was that one, sorry?
Maidstone. Waimairi Maidstone. It's Waimairi Road, Maidstone Crake Road, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, right turn arrows.
Is this the time we can also talk about, or well, obviously not for the plan, but if staff can note why the traffic lights take so long to change? And I'm talking around by Rickett and Bush, where you can sit there for 5 to 6 minutes with no traffic on Straven Road, but you're still sitting there.
Yeah.
And it's quite common on other intersections there as well. Memorial Ave, Roydvale Ave is one prime example where you can sit there. There's no traffic on Memorial Ave, but you're not moving.
Hidden, there is no crike at that intersection. It is made stone on both sides of it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I thought it went all the way up, but you know, you're right. It's Maidstone.
Yeah, just Maidstone, Waimairi.
Yeah, Mike, I'm not sure about the answers to that. That might be another question possibly for our traffic engineer that we can ask. I don't know
if you email me the details, I can look into that.
Wonderful, thanks.
if there's been roadworks there recently, sometimes it's because it's part of the roadworks. They basically had to decommission the sensor loops, which means the traffic lights can't detect you waiting there. But I don't know if that would be the case in that specific one. So yeah, if you send that through, I can look into it.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments with this particular question? Nope. Okay. Well, we'll move down to the next
Oh, was
one.
this we were talking before about whether we wanted to add in a comment about we don't want additional money, we just find money in existing budgets and tag it to these? Do you want to put that in here, or just do you want to leave that?
I mean, we're not specifically asking for, we're not specifically, you know, we're not asking for money and budget to be put into these, but at the same time, if by leaving it, by not saying that, I'd hate for us to run the risk of, if there was money for this, for them not to get the funding. Does that make sense? Like it's a healthy, I don't know, is it a healthy element of ambiguity, right? Like by saying, you know, we don't put funding in these areas, then it's basically allowing these to almost not be priorities. But yeah, Mike, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. For me, it's common sense. If they're going to be working on the intersection for whatever reason it is, that's the opportune time I would suggest that they look at, can we put the right turning arrows in, unless we get special funding for it.
I think, Bridget, if we don't specify it in the submission, likely to be asked of you at the hearings.
Okay.
And that's where, you know, you could sort of say, well, you know, we're not necessarily asking for extra money to be put on budget for them, but we would like to see some priority given to them within the existing capital budget.
Oh yeah, 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 and
but
we
I
also
don't know if it needs to be written in there, Aidan.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Because if we leave it out, there's an opportunity that they might go, well, should we put some money on budget for that? And if they do that, then great. But I think it's probably more of a question that'll come up when Bridget speaks to it.
Yeah. I see, Jason, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. This is maybe one other you could potentially tag on here now. It's not technically in our ward at the moment, but Aidan and Marianne, you might have seen the emails I sent through regarding all of the traffic and roading stuff in Belfast in that section that's coming into our ward. And I just wonder if there's any value in slapping that in there as a general one, because I know there's some stuff for down the track, but what exactly that's going to cover, and the fact that there's a hell of a lot of development happening there right now. 5 years ago, or 5 years away, or whatever, seems quite a long time. For 5 years, I was wondering if alluding to something around Belfast maybe of value.
Yeah, it is a real tricky one because it's not currently in our board area. So your issues that you've raised, Jason, we've passed those on to the Papanui Innes team, because at the moment, until the elections, it does sit with them. So we do have some kind of a briefing prior to the elections or immediately after the elections, to kind of get what's the story with those areas that are now going to be in our area. And it would be something that we could either, again, put in the board plan or ask for in the next annual plan. I just think it's a bit awkward mentioning something in our annual plan that's not in our area at the time that we're submitting.
Awkward
but
for
we
them,
could encourage
Papanui.
we could encourage Papanui Innes board to mention something in theirs.
Yeah. So will they feed back, like if their board's going to go away and look at that or whatever, their board team, they'll give us an update on what they got to, like they're not just going to run with it and okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, then because of that ambiguity, then that's fine. Not too worried about that.
Is that what you'd think, Aidan?
Yeah, I'd say so, and I can check in with Mark what's happened with there as well.
No problemo.
Cool. Any other questions, or shall I move on to the next one? I can't see anyone's hand, so I will move on. Aidan, do you mind scrolling down to the next?
Could I just?
Oh, sorry.
Could I just jump in? 'Cause I realised before when we restarted, my microphone was muted, and so none of you heard me point out that I was working on this paragraph here, kind of while we'd adjourned. So just wondering if that kind of roughly aligns with what you were intending to convey.
I'm happy with that, Aidan.
I'm just reading that last sentence. Hold on. When you say also mitigate, so maximizing the occupancy of the facility could also mitigate the potential for carbon being invested in other facilities. Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. You're kind of saying, for example, creating.
If we don't meet the demands in our,
yeah, it's like
we want to avoid the demand being met by a new car park somewhere else, because that would have the opposite effect. Basically.
Yeah. I wonder.
We could just say that more bluntly.
I mean, it's a great sentence, but I kind of had to read it a few times to understand it. I mean, yeah, you could just go like, for example.
Could more clearly maximising the occupancy of the facility could also mitigate the risk.
Yeah.
New facilities being set up elsewhere to meet the demand.
Yeah. I quite like, I mean, I don't know whether anyone else likes this idea. I don't know how expensive or how difficult it would be as well, but I think coming back to that point of innovation too, it's, and we encourage council to use, rather than to innovate around how carbon can be offset, rather than penalize people and prevent them from having from the accessibility of coming into town.
Mm-hmm. So the board also encourages the council to investigate,
explore,
innovative
alternatives,
options to to offset
carbon emissions. While not being at
rather than sorry,
For me,
broke up there. What about if we say top? We could there.
Because I mean, if you say if someone's going into the city, you're going to have to pay more to go to the city. People will go to the malls. So.
Okay, I think we've probably
it's not only the cost, Mike, it's also the fact
time on that one.
People are having to spend ages, getting in and out of the city is a bloody nightmare. You go down the Park Terrace there, you're then suddenly met by 30k an hour, Montreal Street's 30k an hour. All of those places are all, it's just we've gone about it and we've made it really difficult for people to get in.
Yeah, I quite agree with David. I mean, when you look at the 30k, I went down Durham Street the other day, I did 30, and I had people passing me. So, I don't know why we've got them, but obviously someone thinks it's a good idea, but I don't.
Suresh, I see your hands up.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, moving on to the next question. So thanks for that, Aidan. If we scroll down to...
So we've done that one. So the next question is any further comments?
Oh, yeah. Oh, actually, there is something. I don't know if we want to put it in here or if we want to put it under the question above, but we talked about having the Maryvale residents car parking plan be in review. And we sort of talked about saying, this is some of the street issues are going to be in this plan and they will become a board priority. I just remember that was sort of wording that we talked about, and whether we wanted to just stress that these are areas of board priority, just to show and flag that they're important to us. But maybe we've captured that already by what's said above.
Yeah, I think it's captured there.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
And you specifically want to say these. I mean, we've said high priority areas the board wants to address. So I think that probably covers it off.
Okay, great. All right. Any other comments?
Right.
No. Okay.
Congratulations, you've done well.
Next one. We've got 3 more to go.
So specific feedback on. So any specific feedback on the curbside collection and targeted rate? So the
Yeah, so just so everyone's up to speed with this one, it's around giving people the opportunity to opt out of curbside collection, because currently what's happening is there are residents that are in, I guess, smaller units, like apartment blocks, and there actually isn't space for them to have curbside collection, but they're having to pay for it anyway. So we've put here that we want to give people the opportunity to opt out of needing to, opt out of the curbside collection, especially if they can't use it. And Mike, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not happy with opting out. I mean, I see fly tipping on a daily basis on Hawthornden Road. It's not far from my place. And also when I go out to McLean's Island, the amount of rubbish that's dumped there. And I mean, what we're doing is we're giving people the opportunity to say, well, I haven't got a bin, but you've got it, and I'll go and put it in your bin. I mean, I had that recently when I got a red flag, and I had to go and say to them, well, hang on, that wasn't my rubbish. It was a guy across the road. So, it's one of those things to say it's great to opt out, but, I think we're opening a can of worms.
So there are conditions that would need to be met to be able to opt out. I can't remember off the top of my head what they are, but I think it would be enough to make sure that someone couldn't just opt out and use their neighbour's bin. But I will just double check that.
I think they had to provide proof and evidence and a plan as to how they're going to align with the the council's objectives as well with the waste management.
Yeah, I think it was about some of these
familiar.
newer kind of multi-unit dwellings that, like Bridget said, don't have room to have the 3 bins, but as a grouping that they would look at an alternative source of getting rid of their rubbish.
So yeah,
whether it's a private collection or something.
so it does say opt-out will be approved only where alternative arrangements are made for collection of all waste streams and council considers those arrangements provide an appropriately equivalent service.
Okay, I'm happy with that. I thought I'd seen it somewhere, but
Yeah.
as long as we've got the board supports giving people the opportunity, subject to, what you've just said, basically, that they've got an approved contractor or whatever,
Or alternative method of an approved alternative method of rubbish removal.
In line with council's policy. Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. David, I see your hands up.
I totally support user pays because that's ultimately what we're saying. So therefore, is the slippery slope going into, well, I don't use the library, therefore I want a rebate on that. I don't go to a city council concept, I want a refund on that.
That's a really interesting point. I wonder if it's something that whether we just feed that back as just like a general comment as council thought.
Because you are opening a can of worms, and I'm all for it because I don't. If I only have to pay for what I need to pay for, then that's great. But the thing about being in a community is actually sometimes I've got to look after and pay for something for my neighbour, and that's how we live. And the collective, I don't go down that road. Therefore, why do I have to pay for maintenance on that road? All of that stuff. You will open a can of worms so large. But if I can get rid of my rubbish another way, I'm happy not to have to pay for it. It comes with warning.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I guess what's unique about this situation is, we're wanting people to go back and live in the city. A vibrant city is obviously going to help wider Christchurch, and that a huge contributor to that is encouraging people to live in the city. So I guess this is trying to remove one of those barriers, right? Making it acknowledging that they don't even have space to have these bins. So it's
but you deal with it through a policy issue when with the resource consent. That why are these Williams Corporation buildings getting built when there's not sufficient area for rubbish, or in the days when I was at the Canterbury Club, we never had rubbish in the central city, and none of the other businesses, nor does Ballantyne's, none of those other ones. They have to actually provide it, or some of the people that lived in the central city got a black bag and they had to throw it out on the curbside, and it was taken before 6 a.m. in the morning. So that's where you've that's not the council's fault that they don't have space. The council has power within its legislative ability to make sure that there actually is space when they do it. And poor planning and poor design are not an option to actually be worked. If they've got enough space for a third-party contractor to do it, then actually they've got enough space.
Well said, David. I agree with you 100%. It's not our issue, it's the developers.
Yep.
Is that something you'd like to speak to in the comment?
Oh, look, I'm maybe being devil's advocate, but we are opening a can of worms, and I think it is. You will get guaranteed it will be as death by 1,000 cuts, or a marginal creep, and that we will then have people then going, right, well, I don't use as much water, or I get charged water on my per litre, therefore, I'm getting charged on my bin, or he puts more weight in his rubbish bin, and therefore it's heavier to transport away. Mine's just light leafy matter in the bin, and therefore I want to actually have smaller, cost for my bin. It's a set charge.
All right. So do you want to say
Oh,
that?
and I'm only one voice, and don't let me. Yep.
No, this is the whole point of having a discussion. This is the nature of a submissions committee. Okay. So do we need to do a vote to see whether we want to support to opt out or not?
I think
David?
maybe it would be helpful. I think it would probably be better if you could actually continue your discussion and perhaps find a solution that you could all
Yeah, well, maybe it's just got to be
stand behind. I
at the
think
back,
it'll be
but,
tidier than
the board cautions that this can be opening a can of worms, or wordsmith that better. That there are other. Do you throw it really out there and say the board encourages the council to look for other cost-saving measures on a user-pays basis, i.e. the library?
Yeah, I think we need to word it. Like David's got a really good point, but like when we offer people options, we need to be very cautious and put in, I guess, future-proofing disaster.
Yep.
And setting clear guidelines, I guess, or like criteria. Like in this case, I guess I did and ha about it, but there was that part where they said that in order to be eligible to opt out, you have to meet certain criteria and show proof. And I did mention the fact that that's great, but do residents have to then jump through hoops? There could be that.
Can I offer a suggestion in that case? Can the wording for that then, and I don't have that wording here in front of me, but if the exclusion relates on they have to provide proof, that it is the definition should therefore be that they need to provide proof that the need cannot be met by the regular city council regular refuge collection. Because if it's not a case of I'm not using it, it's actually a case in that the city council refuge collection cannot meet the need of the resident. So therefore, if it can't be met, then actually, there's potentially a requirement for it to be excluded or for it to be opted out. But actually, if you I've said enough. Thanks.
Could we add just David's, like I do agree with David around the rationale of how an opt-out policy sets a risky precedent for future. So maybe this, like at the end of that sentence, something along the lines of our concerns to the potential of an opt-out policy setting a dangerous precedent for other residents to opt out of council facilities
and services.
I think I was just going to mention as well, and following on from Jason's comment, I'm going to have to go because Mum Judy's call. So
have fun.
Well done.
Is that all right? Is that all right, guys?
And we don't need a quorum for our submissions committee, do we?
We do need a quorum, but we wouldn't lose it if one person left.
Yeah.
Your quorum is only two, I
fine.
think, for submissions committee.
I think two people are leaving now. It's myself and Jason, but I don't know what.
I've got 5 minutes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I can just
I can
in the hallway, but okay. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Linda.
Bye.
Thanks.
Yes, Mike.
Oh, no, I think you've answered most of it. We're just going to prolong it. I mean, is it on an annual basis that you have to prove that you've got an alternative thing? Because I can see some people say, well, yeah, I'll do it, and then cancel their contract, and then what do we do with that?
I'm not sure if it's annual or not.
I'm
That's
just
a
being
good-
cynical.
Okay. All right. Cool. Any other questions? No. So
Nope.
haven't put that we need to speak to this, but I'm keen to get guidance from Marianne and Aidan. What do you think?
Well, I suspect it's actually all going to be done at the same time.
Okay, great.
So you might not have to come in again. In which case you might speak to it anyway, if you want to.
Well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I don't think we would want to. Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable for us not to speak to it.
But even if you had the opportunity, you might only need 10 seconds anyway. So
I'm just thinking about that.
I'm sure you could say it during your annual plan submission.
I was just thinking about that last sentence, Aidan, and whether it's kind of back to front, whether you should say that you've got concerns about setting a dangerous precedent and that council would need to look at developing an opt-out policy.
I think you're probably right.
Well done, Marianne.
Yeah, we can wordsmith that.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. So the next one is proposal to increase rates on vacant central city land. So this one was quite interesting. Did everyone read it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So for question number 1, what do you think about the proposal to introduce a city vacant differential of four? That was a weird question. Of 4 for central city land with no active or consented use. So we've got here, the board supports the proposal to increase rates on vacant central city land as an incentive for developers to do something productive with these valuable properties. Any other comments we'd like to add to this?
I disagree.
What would you like to have, David?
So for me to build a building, I need a tenant.
Yeah.
You cannot find a tenant in the city. Look how many empty buildings there are already. So how am I going to build a building? And I'm now going to penalise, as a landowner, I'm now going to be penalised because the economy's gone down the toilet and I can't find a person to become to lease a building with me. So how do you solve that one? I mean, this is bloody Jake McClellan.
How hard even trying though, David?
Hey?
If you've had 10 years, who are the ones that are left?
Yeah, no, I get that. And so maybe the detail is if you haven't, I mean, there are plenty of people land banking out there, and that's their choice. But and there are plenty of disastrous buildings and building ruins around the city that need to be addressed. But to say to somebody, Jason, you own a bit of dirt now, hurry up and go and build on it. Well, how do you? What do you? If you can't go to the bank, and the bank will be just bloody tight on their cash. How are you actually going to build on it when you haven't got a signed lease for somebody to take the occupancy? And I'm going, oh shit! Well, I'm actually going to get penalised by the city council with my rates because what reasonable developer is going to build anything without 60%, 70% of the space taken?
Yeah, I'd like to know what of the ones that are left that are still blank, that are essentially just taking money in from Wilson's car parks, et cetera,
Yep.
How many of them fall into the category that you're describing, and how many of them are in the bad actor category? So I would have thought anyone proactive who was in good faith attempting to build something and put a tenant in a property probably would have done so at some stage over the last 10 years.
Yep.
So
I'd
my gut feel is that
I'd also go your Philip Carter on corner of Hereford Street, High Street and Manchester Street, the old Copthorne building. So he's a developer that's a smart cookie. But, you know, he knows and understands that actually to make $1 and to make it right, I mean, he's not short without a few dollars. He would be able to build something if he wanted. But, you know, what do you build? You build a 6x6, you know, pop-up garage and put that on it. Does that classify and keep everybody happy?
Versatile, mate.
And then,
30 grand, you get a 6x7, and then boom, you're good to go.
Yep, and that's it. Okay, but then you'll have every other resident in the city going, who the heck bloody let them build a bloody you know, a garage on that place, you know? So
Yeah.
Look, I get it, and I understand that we're trying to, you know, I mean, God, look at that old Reserve building, look down Manchester Street, look down all of those buildings, you know, some of them are owned by the Britton family, you know, all of them are just a bloody nightmare. But I think this is the wrong I don't know how to solve the problem, but I think you're going into an area where, again, it's turn it around from being a penalty and go make an incentive. And so instead of actually proposing a rate increase, say to any of those developers for the next 20 years, you build something before 2025 or 2026, and you'll get 10 years worth of rates free.
So David, at question number 3 on this section, it says, sorry, I read that wrong. I thought it said, what else do you think this could be applied and why? Do you want to just...
Could I just jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, David, if this might help with because it's a perfectly fair discussion point, but what the council has also said is, in the meantime, as part of this policy, if you can't develop your site yet, if you keep it looking pretty and well maintained, maybe put some kind of interim transitional use on it, then you get your the rates increase gets remitted back to you, so you don't actually effectively don't pay the increase. So they're really just targeting like the gravel pits with weeds growing up where they're not even being kept attractive. Does that kind of help? What you were worried about?
Yep.
And I do get your point, David. I do wonder though, like we're wanting investment be put into the city.
Okay. Can we put at the end of that sentence, the board also encourages the council to look at a proactive incentive scheme for encouraging development with rates remissions if development has occurred in a timely fashion. So it's a carrot and stick approach.
Yeah, nice.
Kind of weird. The first and second questions are kind of almost built in together.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it's almost the same question.
Mm.
Because you know, do you know the wait time on chipboard at the moment? It's a 7-month wait for chipboard.
Wow.
So if you want to go and build something, if you want to go and do a development on your house, that is 7 months between going down to Bunnings and saying, "Give me a sheet of chipboard."
That's another really good point, David. I wonder if we want to put that in here.
I mean, we're probably crashing it with too much detail, but you know, it's
but it's just telling, you know, I mean, the argument that council are using around rate increases is because of the struggle that they're facing with, you know, lack of, you know, the supply chain, right? And so it's only fair that that point is also, we also remind them of that point, and as a result, that development is going to be hard.
Yeah.
We could actually.
I'm talking about the brain drain and the skill shortages supply at the moment.
Brain drain? Are you meaning like what, mentally?
No, isn't like we're going to have, tens of when the border goes, when the border really genuinely opens, this country will lose hundreds or tens of thousands or thousands of young people on their OE.
Right.
And we are already struggling to fill positions in workplaces with skilled qualified labour. Yeah, we are pretty well, in a world of pain soon.
Yeah. Right.
I think we are digressing here. Let's not get into immigration issues.
I know. I'll end up bloody cutting my wrists. That's bloody the way we're going, but there we go.
So moving on to questions.
Just thinking, Aidan, where you've got due to a shortage of building materials, you could actually just add and workers.
Yep.
And workforce or something like that.
And I've just thought I'd add this extra sentence at the start to strengthen your point, David, that the board's support for the vacant lands is on the basis that property owners who keep their vacant lands in an attractive, well-maintained condition will receive a remission.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy with what we've got in that box. Any other questions or comments on that one?
I'm happy.
I would, for clarity, what is well maintained, and who is the judge?
There's a vacant sites guide that the council maintains, which has sort of more detail in it, so it would be in line with that.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Or else we'll go to the next one.
So do you think that the council investigate options for increasing rates on derelict central city buildings?
Oh, well, actually, we haven't answered that other question. Where do you think? Sorry.
Where else do you think this could be applied and why?
Yeah. I actually kind of struggled with this question. I couldn't really think of anywhere else, but I wondered whether David, Michael, Shreesh, you might have any ideas.
Can you scroll it up? I just can't quite see the top of the sentence.
It's just here. It's where else do you think this could be applied and why?
Okay.
It's possible that there isn't really much in our wards, because I suspect it was more looking at places like Littleton, possibly Brighton.
Yeah.
So we don't. If you don't have to answer it if you can't think of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we just leave that blank?
Leave it blank. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So the next question is, do you think that the council should investigate options for increasing rates on derelict central city buildings to ensure they contribute fairly to overall rates and encourage them to commence repair work? Mike, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, no, that was basically on the last question you had. I was going to suggest properties owned by those living outside the country that don't maintain them. That's going backwards, though.
Like Antonio Hall.
Yeah. Like I know. I mean, I know of a property in Apsley Drive where the owner lives in Malaysia, and the grass is about 2 meters high, and it's just looking like a pig's trough. So But that's the dog. I mean, I wasn't going to answer any questions on this one, so.
Right. And they've raised an interesting point. I do wonder as well, with, like, once again, speaking in precedent, like what happens if, you're an elderly resident who doesn't have the accessibility to go out and maintain your garden, and then this person's also going to be, pinged for being unable to do that. But you raise a good point. Sharish, I see your hands up.
Yes, so I think council should not get into the business of being the judge. It's not a core council function, and council, in my opinion, has no business to even consider looking at other properties when council's own assets like roads and footpaths are in bad shape. So how can you tell even the worst building that, oh, that's not so good, when council's own assets need significant improvement? So I think council should stay out of this entirely.
Right. So with that in mind, how are you comfortable with what we've written up above?
I am not actually. So because rates are applied on value, which itself is subjective. Then you apply another criteria that if your plot is vacant and it is in the central city, or it is not good looking, then we will have additional rates. I think it's just too complicated, too bureaucratic, and I simply don't think council should be going anywhere near that.
Yeah. Well, we have moved on from that question. So, sorry, David.
If we were to, I'm not objecting to anything that's written there. That I think that the council currently have the powers that if they did something fixed, that they can put a covenant on the land title, so that at any point in time that the property is then sold, they can recover the cash. So I think I'm happy that if we had to get into a derelict building, and you can think of that place down Riccarton Road, that old boarding school / place that's just rack and ruin and has been for years.
Antonio Hall.
Yeah, and even there's some places in Central City that if they got and fixed them up, I can think of that place. It's the old Q&A art place just past behind the back of OGB building and behind where the tram shed is, next door to where the new Shams Emporium's gone. That building again has not been entered since the earthquake. If we were to get in there and tidy it up and make safe, then any funds that we use to do that should be placed in a covenant on the title that would be recovered when the building is ever sold, and those that would have to be subjective to rate to interest as well. So I think you make it very, very clear to the landowner that if he's got because the word is there, derelict. It's not just a building that's in things. It's a building that's been abandoned, which a number of those other buildings have been. They've not been made. You think of Harley Chambers, almost directly opposite the city council buildings. So at least the landowner has gone in there and tried to remove the fencing on the footpath, has boarded up the windows as best they can, and has tried to make it so it's not a hideout for the for the drug dealers and the sleep, and the homeless, etc. So that's where the clue is. But if the council has to use its powers to do that, it has to be able to recover its cash.
All right, and Mike, I see your hands up.
No, I tend to agree with what David's saying. He's got some good logical points tonight, as usual. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, if it's derelict, it's obviously they've walked off and left it. So something has to be done, because if something does happen and someone gets killed in there, who's responsible? Is it us or the owner?
Sarah, Bruce. So can we just change it? The board supports the intention behind the suggestion for derelict buildings. Because that just emphasises that it is for derelict buildings. It's not just for, because there will be a definition for derelict. And then put at the end of it, any council money spent to make the buildings made safe should be fully recoverable through a covenant on the land title. Can be recoverable with interest. Yeah, correct.
Okay.
I was just wondering, Aidan, I know Sharish has just left, but do you think, did it want to be stated that the board wasn't necessarily unanimous on this?
Um,
Have they done that kind of thing before? Or do boards, when they couldn't have submissions committee, when they can't agree, just don't submit normally?
Either's an option. I would always be an advocate for encouraging the committee to carry its discussion on until it could find a position everyone supports.
Right.
But in theory, I think it can be said that a majority of the board or the committee supported this, but there was a minority view with
Right.
a different view. Yeah, I have seen that on a couple of occasions.
Mm.
It might also be that when, because Aidan, I'm expecting that you would circulate these once we're finished.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering is, should we actually adjourn the meeting until maybe after the board meeting next week, and that gives us another week to reflect, because there's no real rush to submit these yet. And then so that would just give us a few more days to reflect on what we've discussed, and we could just have 5 minutes to ratify it at the end of the board meeting next week.
Yeah, because then you've got Linda and Jason and Sharice back.
Yeah.
And I think they do need to be given the opportunity that if they don't agree, that they can actually say it wasn't unanimous.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm happy with that. If everybody else is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
The only one we had left anyway was.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you actually even wanted to submit on the last one, did you?
The last one you might not have wanted to. You don't have to.
I just don't know whether it's our place. I didn't really know whether we had any control over this.
Well, I believe that the legislative changes basically do mean that it will be happening. I think it's probably just a technicality that it's a financial policy that we have to consult on financial policies. That I'm guessing that's why it's popped up here. So
can you explain what married freehold means?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's like the Mulderry Reserve lands, particularly on Banks Peninsula, where it's almost no different to a national park in some ways.
Yeah.
It's almost common ownership, really, because it's just a big block of land that the community owns, and it's not being used for buildings. It doesn't have any council services or wastewater or anything. It's basically a reserve.
Okay.
Yeah. So in practical effect, the difference between the Maori freehold land and maybe a council reserve, I mean, obviously there are differences, but it would be like charging rates on a national park or something like that.
Does it make the hairs raise on the back of your neck? Anybody else?
Yep, certainly does for me. I mean,
Yep.
Aidan's talking about National Parks Week.
Like, is it Otahu? Is it Maoris in general? What, you know, is it, am I going to be shoot off the land? Do I, you know, is it all of a sudden we've got separatist communities? What's, you know, and it's, oh my God, where are we going with that?
Yeah.
And is it being forced on us by central government, is it?
Correct.
Can I suggest, if we're going to re-adjourn after the next board meeting, that Aidan and I get a little bit more information on this and have that, and just put some context, a bit more context around it before we make
it a bit scary. Okay.
Well said, Mary Ann. I agree with David. We're opening another can of worms here.
Yeah, I feel that we could all probably, I think I would be really comfortable, Mary Ann, if we could adjourn, just to make sure that we've got the perspectives of the other board members. And I think it would all be in the interest of, as well, to also make sure we do our own research, so we really come prepared to answer questions. The other thing as well is we don't necessarily have to speak to this, like answer this particular submission. And it might be worthwhile as well, just giving some thought around it. So we're not going to be rushing into saying, we're not being rushed to make put a submission together. So it can actually be really well thought out. And okay. Well, with that then, I will adjourn the meeting. So I'm adjourning at 6:46 p.m. And then, hopefully we will come back and we'll catch up after our board meeting so we can have some time to discuss and finish the submissions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aidan, for being the whiz. You've done everything. You're honestly, it's really good. You're having to control many different screens and many different facets, and likewise, Mary Ann as well. Thank you for making this run smooth. I really appreciate it. And thanks, team, for sticking around and showing up. I will see you next Monday.
Great.